Hello, 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 and welcome back. It's so nice to see your beautiful faces. I am talking today about yoga, right? We here in the West think about yoga as a very physical practice. However, there are actually 8 limbs of yoga. There's kirtan, which is chanting. There is a way of practicing that's about honoring life. There is meditation slash mindfulness. There's so many different what they call limbs to yoga that the physical practice, the asana, is just part of it. Breath, meditation, kirtan, doing no harm. There's so many different layers to a yoga practice. Today, I'm going to be talking about what a physical, consistent yoga practice does for us. I have been teaching yoga since 2008. I have been practicing some form of yoga my entire life. My mom taught me um, a little bit of yoga. She's not a yoga teacher, but she took a yoga class in college and she would use the relaxation techniques from Shavasana to put us to bed at night as kids. You know, when we were getting unruly, she taught us yoga. And I know this is really mainstream stuff now. Lots of children are given yoga classes. You know, they do yoga in preschools now as a way to help kids manage moods and get out the wiggles. That's fantastic. I'm so glad. But I grew up in the 80s, okay? And so the 80s and 90s, yoga was not mainstream the way it is now, not in Toledo, Ohio in, the early 80s and 90s. So it was pretty neat that my mom was my first yoga teacher, so to speak. And we would do plow pose. That's the one where you put your head over your feet and things like that. So much fun. And I loved it. I was actually, as a kid, always looking for a yoga class for kids at the Y. They never had it. And so my senior year of high school, I found this new age hippie crystal new age bookstore that had like an upstairs, and in that upstairs carpeted floor there was a woman who was teaching an easy does it yoga class. It was 6 weeks. I was the youngest person in that room, I kid you not, by at least 20 years. And I loved it. And it's funny, I am really much more of a vinyasa girl, but even in that slow, deliberate, aligned, anatomy focused class, I felt that sliver of how yoga makes you feel good inside and out, right? And I just have been hooked. When I was in college, I didn't really have access to yoga, but I was a dance minor, so I did get movement in, and movement that does link to breath and learning how to breathe. Of course, you have to. And it was not until right after high school, a yoga studio opened up right across from my work. It was literally barely a parking lot's length away from where I worked. And so I invested in yoga classes. I found a teacher that I loved. I took some private classes with her. And then I went down this rabbit hole of a 200-hour yoga teacher training, as well as at the time they called it a 500-hour yoga teacher training. Now they call it year 2 and year 3 to equal 500. But let me just tell you, I have a lot more than 500 hours worth of trainings under my belt. I invested a lot of time and money into the practice of yoga. And it's funny, earlier this week, I released a video on YouTube about intuition and how to access your intuition. And I posted it on LinkedIn, of all places, right? It's a little bit woo for LinkedIn. And some gentleman in a suit type of thing was like, and where have you gotten your intuition certifications from? And I was like, I just didn't comment. But really, yoga, learning how to practice yoga, mindfulness, stillness, kirtan, chanting. trying to learn some Sanskrit even and speak in this, use the actual words of yoga and that it was originally created in. All of this has helped me develop intuition. So today, what I want to talk to you about, there are so many benefits of yoga, but there are three in particular. So three benefits of yoga. Right now I'm teaching a morning yoga class, 6:30 to 7 a.m. every morning, Monday through Friday. And people can come if they want to come, or they can skip a day if they want to skip a day. I'm there, I'm practicing, I'm being consistent. You can come be consistent with me or not. It's the client's choice. But what I, after, over 15, almost 20 years of practicing and teaching yoga, there are some really important skills that you can take off the mat into the world, into your everyday life. And one of my favorite books about yoga is by a gentleman called Eric Schiffman. His name is Eric Schiffman. And it's Yoga, the Spirit and Practice of Moving into Stillness. I'm looking at the book over on my shelf right now. The Spirit and Practice of Moving into Stillness. What Eric says, he says in the very beginning of the book, the way he talks about learning a physical asana practice is the physical practice helps us train our mind. And really, the whole point of a physical yoga practice is to let our bodies work out the kinks so that we can sit for longer periods of time in meditation, so that we can move into stillness. And he talks about how in yoga, this practice is like a perfectly spinning top. If you master the physical practice, or if you're consistent in that physical practice, you do it over and over and over, what it helps you do is become like that perfectly centered top. Everything is spinning around you. There might even be chaos around you, but you are the middle. You are centered and you are still. And it's not that there isn't chaos around you, but it's that you can cut through that noise and hold yourself still. I think that's such a beautiful thing. That has definitely been my experience with it. So, three benefits of yoga, in my opinion. Yoga has taught me how to sit in discomfort. So I'm not saying that we should ever sit in pain, physical pain that we don't have to sit in. So, for example, I would never tell you to do something that was causing you pain in your body, like sharp shooting pains. We're not going to do that in yoga. But there might be physical discomfort. You might feel tired. It might not feel fantastic. And learning to connect your breath. Your breath connects your mind and your body, and you're able to sit in discomfort, which is such a great tool for so many different areas of our life, right? How many times do we need to stand in lines that we don't want to be standing in? Or, anything, have conversations that are really challenging, that type of discomfort. Being able to be centered through discomfort is an incredible practice. So I absolutely highly, highly, highly recommend yoga for learning to be able to sit in a centered way in our discomfort. Now, the second thing that I think yoga helps teach us to do is it helps, especially as women, and really I'm speaking to women here, it helps us learn how to take up space. We live in a world, whether we like it or not right now, that is still telling women to pipe down, to get quiet, to lose weight, to be small. And when you are on your mat, even taking a breath in is the practice of expansion. On my mat, I feel like my job is to take up space, to expand, to expand. Yes, there's contraction and expansion, but taking up space. You were not put here to be small. You were put here. You and I were both put here to take up space, to make a difference in the world. And we can only do that by taking up space. Being on our mat, it's a safe space to take up space. Warrior, right? We take the full expanse of our mat in a warrior. In a child's pose, taking a wide leg child's pose, bringing your toes together behind you and your knees out wide and letting your belly drop beneath between the knees to expand, to take up space. If there's one thing that you could take from the mat into the world, my wish for you as a woman is that you will expand, that you will take up space. Practice it on the mat and take it into the world because it is a powerful, powerful benefit of yoga. Now, the next thing is the way I started this. I talked about Eric Schiffman, his book, Yoga, the Spirit and Practice of Moving into Stillness. Yoga, at the end of every yoga class, we practice something called Shavasana, corpse pose. Corpse pose teaches us to pause. Corpse pose asks us to be still, to notice what's happening in our mind, but not get caught up in the story. Even when you meditate, I will preach this till I'm blue in the face. Meditation is not about emptying your mind of your thoughts. It's becoming aware of the thoughts. It's watching the thoughts. You cannot empty your mind of thoughts, right? It is our mind's job to create thought after thought after thought. It's always going to do that. You can find a stillness by becoming the observer of those thoughts. And when we come into our corpse pose, our Shavasana, so to speak, that corpse pose, it allows us to process everything that your body just did for you, everything that your mind and your breath just did for you. And we live in a world, fast cars, fast food, notifications blinging. You might even heard my phone, vibrating here, with notification after notification. So many different distractions coming at us to pull us out of the moment. And what I have found is that when people start practicing yoga in the beginning, and often, sometimes for a very long time, Shavasana is the most challenging pose that it's the most challenging pose for people. And what I find is if you go to a yoga studio that is more concerned with the physical practice than the whole 8 limbs of yoga, and I am going to throw shade on that. That's the low-hanging fruit. That's where we start, but hopefully that's not where you stop. But if you go to a studio that only gives you 2 or 3 minutes of Shavasana when you have a 45-minute or an hour-long class, they have their priorities messed up because we work so hard in our everyday lives that learning to practice the pause, learning to practice that stillness and being with your body, your mind, your spirit in stillness in this day and age is an act of revolution. It is a powerful practice that can have long-term effects on you, on your spirit, on your body, on your mind. So these are the 3 things that yoga does for us. And you can watch on my channel. I've got a ton of yoga classes that you can take. But yoga allows you to be able to sit in discomfort. If you're a woman, even if you're a man as well, non-binary, it really doesn't matter. It teaches you to take up space and it helps you move into stillness, which is something all of us need in this day and age. So I hope you will consider a practice of yoga, a practice of really coming home to yourself through that daily, consistent physical practice on your mat. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you enjoyed this, please like the video and subscribe. I cannot wait to see you again next week. Take care. Happy Friday. Bye.